Hello, everyone. We hope you all are doing well and wanted to thank you for joining us for this webinar today. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. If you are having issues with your audio, please try logging out and logging back in. If that doesn't work, you can always call in using your phone number listed on your registration email. Should you have any questions throughout the webinar, please submit them using the chat box and we will get to those at the end. This webinar featuring Federal Trade Commission and Better Business Bureau will be covering financial impact of the coronavirus. We will be covering job loss, unemployment scams, government grants, trouble paying bills / quick loans, mortgages, auto loans, and debt collection. You will be hearing from Laura Blankenship, the Director of Marketing for Better Business Bureau serving Eastern Michigan, Troy Baker, the Director of the Educational Foundation for Better Business Bureau serving West Michigan, and Larissa Bungo, the Assistant Regional Director of the Federal Trade Commission's East Central Region. And with that, I will toss it over to Laura.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We will start with talking about job loss. This might have been your first step if you unfortunately experienced job loss during this time, this pandemic. But if this wasn't your first step, if you lost your job temporarily or not, contact your state unemployment insurance office for information about applying for unemployment insurance benefits in the state of Michigan. But a second step would be to contact your creditors. They may be willing to talk with you about some type of minimum payment. They're also more likely to be reasonable if you talk to them up front rather than waiting until after you've missed a payment. So make sure those are a couple steps that you're taking, especially if you have experienced job loss. Next slide, please. Some unfortunate things that come with unemployment are unemployment scams. A common unemployment insurance scam involves a phishing email. A phishing email is designed to look like it's from a reputable source. Scammers use phishing emails to trick you into sharing personal identifiable information like your social security number, bank and credit card information, and other sensitive data that could help them commit fraud such as identity theft, or the emails might try to get you to download malicious software onto your computer. The scam emails may claim to be from the U.S. Department of Labor or the Michigan Unemployment Insurance personnel. The messages might say the unemployment insurance claim you filed is incomplete and you need to provide more information, or the emails may offer to help you file your claim. Emails may also ask questions that are unrelated to you or your claim. If that's the case, that signals that the email is probably fraudulent. The phishing emails may also ask you to click on a link. If you do, it might take you to a fake website that asks for your personal information or encourages you to click on a dangerous link that could download malicious software such as ransomware. One scam that has hit unemployed claimants is in several states is an email from an unemployment assist, which the subject line reads ID eligibility requirement, and it says 1, must be available for work, or 2, verification required, second request. The fraudulent email claims that you must provide certain personal information to either file or complete your unemployment insurance claim. Don't provide it, instead hit delete. Debit and direct deposit card scams. That's another thing that we're seeing with unemployment scams. They focus on how some states issue benefits. They may use these methods of payment to deliver unemployment benefits. One scam asks you for personal information to apply for a card. Another scam has you apply for the card and then charges you for inactivity. Always make sure the source of a payment-related offer is legitimate. Fake phone call scams, that's another one that we're seeing quite a bit. And that involves fake communications via the phone or text message. And the message may say the applicant's unemployment benefits account has been suspended and the applicant must reactivate the account by calling a certain number. Which then asks for personal information like debit card numbers and PIN numbers. Keep in mind that state unemployment insurance programs won't contact you through text messages, so you'll know these communications are not legitimate. Also, if you get a phone call, it's always good to verify information. And if you ever feel weary, hang up the phone and call the number that you find for your unemployment office instead of using any phone number that they give you directly. Job seeker scams. Because so many Americans have lost jobs and are looking for new ones, scammers sometimes pretend to be potential employers. They may contact you by phone and email to trick you into believing they have a job for you. Their real goal is to collect your personal information or get money from you. So here's some common characteristics of job seeker scams. One, they request for your personal identifiable information like your social security number. Job offers that seem too good to be true. We always say if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Senders or callers that you do not recognize. Failure to list a specific job, and references to a resume that you didn't post online. Offers to sell you something like a starter kit. Offers to pay you with bank account transfers. Costco is actually warning potential victims about a particular scam, which is an email with the subject line that reads provisional job offer and claims Costco Wholesale is hiring. Some of the emails ask for a processing fee. Costco says the email uses the company's logo and might look authentic, but it's fraudulent. The company says it would never offer a job via email to a prospective employee it doesn't know. Another one that we see is the fake website scams. So with the fake websites, they try to fool victims into sharing personal information or downloading malicious software even before COVID-19. So now those fraudulent sites have popped up claiming they will help you file your unemployment insurance claim and collect your benefits. Those sites are fraudulent. Only you can claim your unemployment benefits. The scammer's goal is to collect as much personal information from you that they can get and then use it for financial gain. It's a good idea to never answer suspicious or unsolicited requests for personal data or share your personal information if you aren't sure if an official website or with a legitimate state personnel. So here are some steps that you can take. Next slide, please. Something else that is work from home scams. So while you're looking for work, you might be tempted by ads that offer a variety of work at home jobs, internet businesses with envelope stuffing, rebate processing, medical billing, and more. But many of these jobs are scams or don't deliver on the claims they make. So to avoid some work from home scams, one, don't pay to get a job. Nobody legitimate will charge you upfront for a job. Avoid fake job ads to find legitimate job listings. Try visiting sites like your state's Career One Stop or looking on legitimate job websites. Don't believe ads for previously undisclosed federal government jobs. Information about federal jobs is free at usajobs.gov. And then check out a company with your local consumer protection agency or your state attorney general. They can tell you whether they've gotten complaints about a particular work at home program. You can also check with us, the Better Business Bureau, and see if we have anything, if we've seen any scams about these particular jobs. We get tons of complaints each year about these work from home job scams. Another one is student loan scams. Americans owe tons and tons of money in student loan debt. So it's no wonder that scammers are preying on this financially vulnerable population. So you have to watch out for offers to forgive your student loan debt in its entirety or change your repayment plan for a fee or requests for other personal information in order to suspend your payments, especially in response to the coronavirus. There is no such thing as an instant student loan relief, and you should not need to pay a fee for help from your loan servicer. All federally backed loans have automatically suspended payments and set interest to 0%. Now, of course, that can change, so you have to make sure that you are staying up to date with what your particular loan agency has set for these guidelines. Do not accept unsolicited offers to help you with your student loan payments, and never give out your personal information. If you are having trouble making payments because you've lost your job, reach out to your loan servicer for options. Some student loan red flags. Any company that claims to have a relationship with the Department of Education, any company that promises you a set payment or forgiveness. Companies cannot promise forgiveness or guarantee an income-based repayment because both will change based on your income. Another red flag, any promise of immediate loan forgiveness or cancellation, again, they cannot do that. Any promise that a buyer will buy the loan and settle for a set amount. And also any promise that because your school closed or is being sued, you can get forgiveness. Those are all red flags. Next slide, please. Government grants, that's another thing that we're seeing. Some scammers are tricking people into thinking they need to provide personal information to obtain their government relief check. Not everyone has received their stimulus checks yet, so this is still something that is very active, this scam. The government plans to distribute those based on consumers' 2018 or 2019 federal tax returns. And keep in mind, the IRS does not initiate contact by email, text, or social media. How you can protect yourself: do not respond to any correspondence claiming to be the IRS or other branch of the government requesting personal information in exchange for access to your stimulus check. For accurate information about the federal relief checks and when you can expect yours, you can visit the IRS's coronavirus resource page. No legitimate federal government employee would ever call you and tell you that you qualify or have been approved for a grant for which you've never applied. Protect yourself from scammers that tell you that you need to pay a small processing fee to qualify to receive a grant for educational costs, home repairs, home business expenses, or money for nothing. Those, especially those grant offers, they offer the free money. People who run scams who often claim to provide help and sometimes claim to be federal government officials. Don't be fooled, though, by these scams that request money from you. It is illegal to ask you to pay to apply or to increase your odds of being awarded a federal grant. Some quick facts about the government grant process. The government grant applications and information about them are free. The names of agencies and foundations that award grants are available for free at any public library or on the internet. The internet is how you would probably go about doing that right now, as we are still under the Stay-at-Home Act here in Michigan. The only official access point for all federal grant-making agencies is www.grants.gov. There are no fees associated with applying for a government grant. And all government grants involve an application process to carry out projects with a public purpose and are not intended for personal use. You will not be contacted by the government to make you pay for a grant. And with that, I'll turn it over to Troy for the second half of the BBB scam.
Thank you, Laura. So we're going to talk about utility scams. Utility scams are continuing in this COVID-19 era in a couple different ways. The main way that we get this is calls claiming that you're going to get your power or gas shut off very soon. They'll tell you within an hour or within a couple hours. Very threatening phone calls. They demand immediate payment, usually through gift cards or a wire transfer. That is not how this works. There are some protections in place regarding utility shutoffs from the state level. If you have any questions, if you get these calls, if there's any way threatening to shut off your power, take their information, but hang up and find your utility bill and call the company directly using the contact that's on your bill. Do not send money immediately. That is not how these work. The other one that we have seen, usually as weather gets warmer and we're heading into late spring, early summer, are door-to-door companies. It is unclear what this is going to look like as we get into our new normal and whether we'll be comfortable with people coming to our doors. But anytime somebody comes to your door, typically they'll ask to see your utility bill. The first thing you should do is ask to see their identification. They should be able to show an identification that shows what company they are with. If the identification isn't provided, stop the conversation and tell them to have a good day. If the identification doesn't match the company they said they were for, that's problematic. There are companies that do go door to door, utility companies, offering a product, an alternative to the typical consumers in DTE. However, they should be honest about what they're selling and who they are. And if they're being dishonest, you really don't want to do it. Do not sign anything on the spot, even if it seems innocuous. We have seen a lot of complaints over the last couple of years from people who say, the person said that I was just signing something documenting that they showed up at my door. They just needed it for their boss to show that they came. What they really ended up signing was a contract to switch their utilities over. So don't sign anything. Take their information, do some research, and then if you want to make the change, you can contact the company directly and make the change. But anytime somebody comes to your door, don't sign on the spot. Anytime somebody calls you talking about utilities, don't pay right away. Contact your actual utility company. That way you will prevent being scammed. Next slide, please. The next one we want to talk about is payday loans and quick loans. These are the cash stores you might find in your community. These are possible ways to make up for shortfalls. Lots of people are having issues right now. High unemployment rate, people are off work, people need money. Payday loans can help you bridge that gap, but they are incredibly expensive and for a lot of people, a slippery slope. How they work, typically you write a check. In this case, you get a $500 loan, you write a $575 check that will be cashed in 2 weeks. So you have 2 weeks to pay off the loan. You either give them cash in 2 weeks of $275 and they rip up the check, or if you don't pay, they cash the check. And if you don't have sufficient funds, then you can be charged the check fees and other fees that go along with that, and you're responsible to pay that back. $575 on a $500 loan, that $75 doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it adds up. Next slide, we can show you that. So there are some rules in Michigan when it comes to payday loans. You can have no more than 2 loans at a time, and they have to be from different businesses. So there is a database that's used, and if you go to get a third payday loan, they are supposed to check that database and make sure you don't have too many. None of the loans can be for more than $600 each, not including the fees. Now, the state has a set scale for fees, typically between 15 and 11% of the loan, depending on the size of the loan, up to $600. For a $100 loan, that 15% fee is $15. Over 2 weeks, that doesn't seem like a lot of money, but when you do the math, that's a 391% APR. If you think about your credit cards, they're probably in the teens, low 20% APR. So this is multiple times more expensive than a credit card is, than a loan you would take from somebody else. These really should be the loans of last resort. One of the big problems we see a lot of when it comes to payday loans is people get underwater. They take one loan, then they have to take a second loan to pay off the first loan, then they got to take a third loan to pay off the second loan. And while you might not see that full year APR, if you keep having to take a loan to pay off the other loan, you're going to hit that. And lots of people do, and they get stuck. So payday loans really need to be the last resort. If you have violations, if you find a company that is violating the rules, you should report them to the Department of Insurance and Financial Services, also known as DIFS. That is the state agency that governs payday lending. And then what we have often seen happen for people who maybe max out their payday loans at the storefront down the road is they go online and they look for online lenders. Very similar process. Some of the more problematic ones are based on Native American tribes out of state, and they don't have the same rules that the state of Michigan has, and they don't have to follow a lot of the rules because they are on Native American land. But that also eliminates some of the protections that you might have under state law. So be very cautious when using online lenders. Again, a loan of last resort. Next slide, please. Online car sales. When it comes to COVID, we have seen a big change and an increase in online car sales, both for used cars and new cars. You might see a lot of commercials now from new car dealers that are offering to deliver them to you. You don't even have to go into the dealership anymore. The first thing you should do, along with researching the car you want, is research the seller. Is the seller licensed by the Michigan Secretary of State? Any dealership or anybody who sells more than 5 vehicles in a calendar year is required to be licensed by the state of Michigan. And there are certain requirements that go along with that licensing, and that can protect you because there are some things the state can do to come in and shut the company down if they aren't following the rules. So look for a licensed dealer. The Secretary of State's office has that. One thing you should know, the Better Business Bureau checks licensing as part of our accreditation process. So if you go to bbb.org and you look up a car dealer, if you see they are accredited, we have verified that they have the appropriate licensing. So you can tell that they are licensed simply because they're accredited. If they're not accredited, you will want to take that additional step to verify licensing. We haven't done that for them yet. Do your own vehicle history check. So Carfax, AutoCheck. Don't just take the seller's word for it. Do your own check. It costs about 20 bucks usually to do one of these checks online. It'll save you a whole lot of grief if you get a forged document, especially if you're using a private party and not a well-established dealership. Ask about test drives and getting inspections. You still want to get your vehicles inspected, especially if you're buying a used vehicle. You want to take it for a test drive. The process for online car sales is a little different. So you might do some of the paperwork up front. They deliver the car. They're going to give you an opportunity to see the car, drive it. If you set it up ahead of time, you may be able to even take it to get that private inspection by a mechanic. Pay the money to get that inspection, especially in a used vehicle. That will help identify any problems with that vehicle that you can then talk with the seller and negotiate to get repaired or to take the price off the sale. But get that done first before you finish things. That way you know that you're protected. Everything needs to be in writing. Make sure if you just get the car and there's a scratch, if it needs engine work, if it needs a new muffler, whatever it is, that is in writing that it is going to be repaired by the seller. Don't take anybody's word for it. Put it in writing. That's the only way to guarantee you're protected in that case. Know your warranty and return policy. So make sure you understand the warranty. Make sure you understand what is covered, what kind of payments are required, and where you can take the vehicle. Some warranties will require you to take it to a specific location. Others are a little broader. So know what that process is if you have to get a repair before you sign the paperwork. Because once you sign the paperwork, it's yours. Return policy. Secretary of State is being very clear that commercials you see say you can return the car within a certain period of time in a lot of cases, especially with new vehicles that come to you. That technically isn't a return. You are selling the car back to the dealership within that window, usually a few days or a week. So know what that policy is though, and that return period is. So if you get the car and you drive it for a couple days and you decide you don't like it, you can get out of that and get something that you will work with and you like. And then don't feel pressure to complete the sale. Just because they brought the car to you, just because they have the paperwork in front of you, doesn't mean it's too late to change your mind. So don't feel pressure to take possession of a car that you're not happy with simply because they brought it to you. You can say no. Don't sign the final paperwork and take possession of the car until it's completely done and you're happy with it. And that will help protect you on some of those online car sales. Next slide, please. One thing we do see a lot of when it comes to car sales, especially for people with credit issues and smaller lots, are spot delivery. This is where you buy the car, you drive it away, and then you get a phone call a day or a week later from the dealership saying, the financing fell through, the bank wouldn't take the loan, the bank rejected your loan. You either need to bring the car back, you need to pay us in cash, or you have to sign a new agreement with different terms that they can then go get financing for. That is called a spot delivery, and that is illegal in the state of Michigan. You are not required to return the car or change the terms once you have signed the paperwork and driven away with the vehicle. The Secretary of State's office has been very clear on this rule, that once you sign the paperwork and drive away, that is your vehicle. That agreement is between you and the seller, and if the seller cannot find third-party financing, if they take that agreement to the bank and try to sell it to a bank, and they can't get that, they are required to take the payments. So if they contact you, if they say you have to bring it back, your answer is no, I don't have to. I will pay you the amount on the first of the month whenever my payment is due. I will bring you a check, I will bring you the money and pay the dealership. That is how it works. If you have violations of that, make sure you report that to the Michigan Secretary of State. One thing is sure, when you buy a vehicle, you should get a copy of all the paperwork. Do not leave with that car in that dealership without a copy of everything you signed. One of the problems we see with people who get caught up in this is they don't have the paperwork. So they can't prove that they bought this car. And if we go to the next slide, I'll show you an example of that. This is an actual phone call between a car dealership in Allegan, Michigan, and a buyer. This is a transcript of the phone call. You can find the phone call online. It was posted by a news organization. The seller wanted to know where his car was when talking to this buyer. The buyer stood his ground and said, we have an agreement, I will pay you, you have to uphold your contract. The seller got very upset and said, you don't have a licensed vehicle, you will never get title to that car. I haven't processed it yet. I have the title sitting right here. If you'd like me to press charges against you, I will right now. The seller did call Michigan State Police, who declined to get involved. So the seller took a spare key and drove over in the middle of the night and drove away with the new car and basically stole the car after accusing the buyer of stealing the vehicle because they couldn't get the financing. This ended up, the Secretary of State's office fined the dealership. They had to undergo training and were on probation for 2 years. And a federal lawsuit was filed where the buyer received a confidential settlement. So this is one of the examples. They get very aggressive. Sellers will try to force you and convince you that you have to return the vehicle if they can't get the financing. That is not how it works. You have rights, so contact the Secretary of State and don't fall victim to these spot deliveries. Next slide, please. If you come across a scam, the Better Business Bureau scam tracker at bbb.org/scam tracker is where you can go. So if you have fallen victim to a scam, please go there and report it. We use this data to share with law enforcement. We use this data to share with the public and the media to try to help inform people about what scams are being found in our community and to do presentations like this. if you're not sure that something you have is a scam, if you get an offer and you want to verify it, you can go to the scam tracker, you can type in some information and see if that's being reported as a scam or something similar to that is being reported. Last year, $42 million was prevented going to scammers from people who came to the scam tracker and saw that what they saw was a scam and they didn't have to pay the money out. And they didn't fall victim because they came and checked the BBB scam tracker. So please take the time to check the scam tracker, report scams as you see them. It does help. And as I said, we work with the Federal Trade Commission and other law enforcement agencies to make sure that we are helping protect customers with their data. Next slide, please. One more note on the Better Business Bureau. We are both open for business. Better Business Bureau serving Western Michigan and Eastern Michigan and the Upper Peninsula. Our contact information is there. You can search businesses at bbb.org and you can contact us if you have any questions. We are happy to help in any way we can. And with that, I will hand it over to Larissa from the FTC.
Great. Thank you so much, Troy. Good morning, everyone. I'm Larissa Bungo. I'm the Assistant Director for the FTC's East Central region, which covers an 8-state area, including Michigan. For those who aren't familiar with us, the FTC is the nation's consumer protection agency. We fight fraud through enforcement and education. And I want to thank the BBB serving Eastern Michigan and the BBB serving Western Michigan for hosting this informative webinar this morning. I want to let you know, in addition to the great information that Troy has already given us and Laura has already provided, the FTC has a dedicated webpage with financial tips for consumers affected by COVID-19 at ftc.gov coronavirus financial impact. I know one big issue right now is what to do if you can't pay bills. And while there aren't great options, I do have a few ideas to share. The first is to ask for time. Many companies are permitting extensions on payments. And the idea here is the companies you're paying want to get their money back, even if it is eventually. So they might work with you to set up a payment plan with more time to repay. You can also look for a credit counselor who might be able to help, but check out ftc.gov credit counselor first for tips on how to choose a counselor who really helps you out. Keep in mind that most reputable credit counselors are nonprofit and offer services at local offices, online, or on the phone. But please be aware that some nonprofit status doesn't guarantee that the services are free, affordable, and in some cases, even legitimate. So in fact, there are some credit counseling organizations that charge high fees, which they may hide, when others may urge clients to make voluntary contributions that can cause more debt. A reputable credit counselor should be willing to send you free information about itself and its services that it provides without requiring any details about your situation. And if it does, consider that a red flag. Switching to the next slide, please. Of course, there's also the option of borrowing money from a credit union or bank if you can't pay your bills right now, or putting more on your credit card. Before you borrow, take a look at the cost. What are the APR on the loan or the credit card balance? What's the fees to get the money? When is the repayment due? What happens if you can't? Then with that information in hand, you can figure out what the best deal may be for you. For additional information, we've created a website. On our website, consumer.gov, you can get information about using credit. I also want to take this opportunity to remind everybody that credit reports are free now and every week during the COVID pandemic. You can go to annualcreditreport.com to check on your credit report. And if any of you have been a victim of identity theft, I also want to let you know there's a free resource, identitytheft.gov, that you can go to report identity theft and have a personalized recovery plan for dealing with it. Next slide, please. If you're having trouble paying your rent, many states and localities have temporarily halted evictions, including Michigan. I believe there has been an extension on the moratorium on evictions until June 11th. You want to check with your state AG's office, so michigan.gov, local consumer protection agencies, and legal aid offices for resources. I know that some local community organizations are offering rental assistance. And as Troy mentioned, you want to watch out for utility scams. There are also many communities that have halted utility shutoffs during the pandemic. Moving to the next slide, please. Trouble paying your mortgage. If you're having trouble paying your mortgage, that can be very scary, but there are some protections in place for homeowners. First, let's talk about the federally backed mortgages. You want to start by contacting your mortgage servicer immediately. If you have a federally backed mortgage, the CARES Act has stopped foreclosures for 60 days from March 18th, 2020, and has given borrowers the right to 180 days of forbearance. This includes loans that are backed by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, and USDA. As you can imagine, it might take a while to get the loan servicer on the phone at this time. Moving to the next slide, we'll talk about mortgages that aren't federally backed. Again, the tip is to start with your mortgage servicer. You want to explain your situation and ask what they can do for you. I know that your state, michigan.gov, has resources for homeowners, and there's a stepforwardmichigan.org site that you can get to from michigan.gov, which discusses programs for homeowners. Also want to let you know that the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, keeps a list of approved housing counseling agencies. Counselors can help explain your options, or you can call the Home Ownership Preservation Foundation. The number is on the slide. They are a nonprofit that partners with mortgage companies and local government to help people get loan modifications and avoid foreclosure. Moving to the next slide, we want to make sure that we share some tips on avoiding mortgage scams. Unfortunately, as Troy mentioned at the outset, the scammers follow the headlines and they also follow the money. So whatever kind of mortgage you have, know that scammers follow these headlines, and you are likely to hear from them with promises that they can change your loan to reduce your monthly payment or take other steps to save your home. Unfortunately, many companies aren't quite truthful, and they might outright lie to sell their services, or they make promises that they can't deliver. One of the best ways to spot a scam is to remember, never pay upfront for help. Federal law says you don't have to pay anyone for mortgage help until they deliver the results you want. And you can always contact your mortgage servicer to see if they can match or better that offer. Next slide, please. If you're having trouble making car payments or worried about making your next car payment, you're not alone right now, and there are a few things you can do that might help. First, try to negotiate with your lender as soon as possible. Some banks, credit unions, auto financing companies are letting people delay payments or renegotiate their payment schedules. And if your lender does agree to make changes, you want to make sure you get that in writing. You also have rights that may be available in your state, so you want to check michigan.gov and your local consumer protection agencies to see what is available to you there. And you want to see if you can refinance your loan. If a lower interest rate or longer loan could help make your car payment doable, this may help. It's important to remember, don't make the choice to do nothing. If you miss payments, your lender could repossess your car, sometimes without warning, and you could also be charged a lot more in fees, and that could damage your credit. Moving to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about debt collection. Given the tough financial impact this pandemic is having on so many of us, we might be getting behind on other kinds of payments too, and that means debt collectors might start calling. If you get calls, you may want to talk to the debt collector at least once, even if you don't think you owe the debt or can't repay it right away, to confirm whether it's really your debt. If it is your debt, the collector can give you more information about it, and you may be able to work out a payment plan with the collector or an agreement to reduce the amount of the debt. Some things we want to make sure you know: debt collectors have rules they have to follow, and if they don't, we hope you'll tell the FTC. For example, as on the slide, they can't call before 8 a.m. or after 9. They can't use profanity, threaten violence, or harass you. They can't lie or pretend to be someone they're not. They can't threaten you with arrest or deportation, or tell anyone except your spouse or lawyer about your debt. And they can't call you at work if they know your employer doesn't allow these calls. If the collector breaks these rules, report it to the FTC and to your state attorney general's office. Moving to the next slide. Laura mentioned some great information here on forbearance and the set of interest rates on 0% for federal student loans. I just want to mention again that there is automatic forbearance for student loan borrowers through September 30th if it's a federal loan. And if you are overdue in repaying the federal student loan, the Department of Education has told its private collectors to stop calling, sending letters, or sending billing statements to people in default. Some states are putting limits on what debt collectors can do to collect on a debt, and even limiting the kinds of debt that they can collect. You can find out more by going to michigan.gov. Moving to the next slide, please. Some tips on what to do if the calls become too much and how to get the calls to stop. One note, though, is even if you are successful in stopping the debt collector from contacting you, it doesn't cancel the debt. So we want to make sure that you're aware of that. To stop a collector from contacting you, you can send the collector a letter telling them to stop contacting you. Send it by certified mail with a return receipt. This gives you a record that the collector got your letter. And if you want to avoid a trip to the post office during the pandemic and prefer to just drop it in the mail, then keep a copy of the letter for your record. Once the collector gets your letter, the collector can only contact you to confirm it will stop contacting you, or to tell you that the collector or creditor will take a specific action like filing a lawsuit. Moving to the next slide, please. One way we can all help each other is by sharing the good, trustworthy resources when we find them, and I hope you'll share these resources and those that Laura and Troy have already shared in your community. You can keep up to date with the latest scams by signing up for the FTC's consumer alerts. You can go to ftc.gov subscribe. And as I've mentioned, your reports matter. As Troy said about the scam tracker, the FTC does take complaints from the BBB. It helps us very much to know about the scams that are out there and the trends that you all are seeing. We share the complaints that we receive with other law enforcement, and we use the reports to help us both with our law enforcement actions and also in our education efforts. So please, whenever you spot a suspicious claim or anything you think may be a scam, even if you don't fall victim, it's really tremendously helpful to us if you would share that information with us. Tell the FTC at ftc.gov complaint. 3 key resources that I hope you'll share here on the slide. If you go to coronavirus.gov, is the latest information, including from the CDC, on COVID-19 scams, ftc.gov coronavirus, and the federal government's response as a whole is at usa.gov coronavirus. To the next slide, please. We know a lot of people are out of work and hurting financially, and I want to mention again the consumer.gov site. It is a website that's easy to understand and has useful information about money management, including things like how to make a budget, what credit is, and how loans work. Next slide, please. There are a number of resources on this slide that we want to make available to all of you. Just a reminder, some of these we've already gone over. To file a complaint, you can go to ftc.gov complaint. The phone number is there if you prefer to make the phone call. I covered the coronavirus COVID-19 specific scams. It's at ftc.gov coronavirus. To find out information about a business, go to bbb.org. look up a charity, you can go to give.org to make sure that the charity is legitimate and that the money you are allocating is actually going to the charity. The BBB also likes to receive complaints, and it goes into Scam Tracker, the bbb.org complaint. You can leave customer reviews, learn about scams, and we're hoping that you'll share information about bad ads or price gouging. BBB information about coronavirus is also available at bbb.org coronavirus. And finally, the Michigan Attorney General's Office, the website that I had mentioned earlier is michigan.gov. And you can call the number 877-765-8388 also. Next slide, please. At this time, we want to open up questions from the audience. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask of us, please use the chat feature. We're happy to answer any of your questions. And while we're looking for questions, I'll just mention again about the credit reports being free and available every week. Again, if you would like to check on your credit, you can do that weekly. The credit reporting agencies are making that available. And you can go to annualcreditreport.com. It will take you to the legitimate site. Ashley, are there any questions in the chat?
Nothing coming through yet. I just want to remind everyone that if you don't think of any questions at the moment, but one pops into your head later, if you want to shoot me an email, my contact info is on the slide. I will get it over to whichever one of these guys it's directed towards. So we'll wait another minute here and see if anything comes through. This isn't a question, but George says, thank you for the great information.
Thank you, George.
All right. If there are no if there are no questions, I guess we will end this for now. You will be receiving the video recording as well, so you can go back through and look at all the information. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.